Yes, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to talk Justice League yet again. I went and saw it a second time in the cinemas, this time in 2D. And 2D is a little bit clearer than 3D. And man, every time I try to get to see this stupid movie, man, the cinemas they're packed, man. Packed with people. This time, people with their children, with their families came. And man, I can't seem to catch a break. At least I got a relatively good seating so that I saw the movie pretty good. And I got to catch up on some other things I missed in the movie, conceptually, in terms of principles, in terms of ethics, morals, and even in terms of representation. This movie represents a lot of different people, which is why a lot of different people will identify with this movie. Yes, it is based mostly around the characters because basically the story is about the characters, right? The members of the Justice League. It's named the Justice League, just like how Wonder Woman was about Wonder Woman. The Justice League is about Justice League. Man of Steel was about Man of Steel, right? So obviously the majority of the movie is based on these characters and how they interact with one another. But there are a lot of subtle things which have relevance to our world. And there are other subtle things and nuances which have reference to different personalities of people. And the reason this film works so well is because each person can see themselves in one of these characters that you saw. So I think there's a psychology behind it. Now, the story of this movie is, the main story that is quite simple. But it has a number of sub-stories or subplots. And that's what made this story so good. I noticed that some people were saying that the story, especially in the beginning, was messy. I disagree. I disagree. You had to show the backgrounds of the different characters and the components that make the backgrounds of the different characters so that you could actually identify with these characters and therefore move along with them. So no, I just don't agree with that it was messy. I heard some other statements on this movie that it was a movie that was narratively a mess, and they also said that, if I'm not mistaken, you had to know BVS and Man of Steel to be able to follow the events in this movie, and I quite clearly disagree with that. This movie is a standalone movie, and they talked about the mother boxes and what is a mother box, and the movie says what a mother box is. I'm not gonna spoil it for anyone, but it explains what a mother box is. It explains who Steppenwolf is. It explains why Steppenwolf has his motivations. Which leads me to another thing, Steppenwolf. Let me get to Steppenwolf here. Here's Steppenwolf here. And a lot of people were saying that the CG on Steppenwolf, he didn't make him look real. They should have used Sierra Hines. He should have resembled Sierra Hines and all kinds of stupid things I've heard people say. And how he was talking and moving unnaturally. First of all, Steppenwolf is probably the best CGI I have seen of any CGI figure in the DCEU that's held as a major villain or any kind of figure in the DCEU. Okay, Doomsday I thought was not that great, even though as he began to develop, he looked more and more like Doomsday. But more so, Steppenwolf is a monster, if you haven't realized. And if you look, there are horror elements to Steppenwolf. If you look at Steppenwolf very carefully, you'll realize he looks kind of like a horror figure, right? He sort of looks like a Wolfman. He sort of looks like a cross between a Wolfman and Freddy Krueger. Do you guys notice that? All right, so Steppenwolf he wasn't supposed to be this beautiful specimen of a man. Neither was he supposed to resemble Sierra Hines. And even when he's talking, he looks very sort of like he's coming from a horror flick. He looks horrific. Even the parademons look horrific. They don't look natural. They look demonic and sickening and horrific. And that's the feeling you're supposed to get from Steppenwolf. He's supposed to make your blood crawl. He's supposed to, every time he appears on the screen, he's very powerful. He's very cunning, but he's supposed to be someone who does not make you feel comfortable watching him. He's not supposed to be the villain that's attractive. You understand what I'm saying? And so I never really had a problem with Steppenwolf and even how he was talking and moving, because in the context of who he is and what he goes for and where he comes from, Apocalypse is hell. Apocalypse is hell. Steppenwolf's like a demon, a very powerful demon, and Darkseid is like the devil. You see what I'm saying? They're not supposed to look nice. They're not supposed to look perfect. They're not supposed to move perfectly because they're aliens. They're new gods, you know. So I didn't really get what people were talking about with the CGI and stuff. I thought Steppenwolf moved quite appropriately and very nicely, and he filled out into the realism that we were dealing with. And so I saw him as a creature, and a weird creature at that, and a very powerful creature. That's what I saw him as. I didn't think of him as human, and I think a lot of people, when they talk about Steppenwolf, I'm surprised that they don't realize that he makes their blood crawl, that he makes them scared. Your heart rate had to go up when Steppenwolf appeared on the screen, because Steppenwolf is so violent, and Steppenwolf is so determined to have a hell on earth. Okay, so I mean, there's no way in God's green earth you can say, look at Steppenwolf. If you look at him here, he does not. It makes you unsettled. If you're looking at this picture of Steppenwolf, you're gonna feel unsettled, and it's because, like I said, he looks like the Wolfman crossed with Freddy Krueger. Right? And so that's what I had to say about that. With respect to the CGI, which people still keep on harping on, Superman and Wonder Woman and Batman and the Flash and Cyborg and Aquaman, they are members of the Justice League that you see in front of you here. In terms of the CGI, whenever these characters were in CGI format, I thought it was pretty good, pretty well done. It wasn't always consistent. It wasn't always consistent. I loved how Batman looked. How when he leaped into the air, how his cape moved and everything. It was beautiful stuff. But in terms of the CGI, I gotta say, it's a remarkable CGI, but you would expect if they had done, they had to do last minute CGI work on certain things, they wouldn't be as refined. And so what I keep on saying is, some of the CGI of different characters in this movie, whether they be minor characters or major, for the most part were well done. But where they had to do last minute CGI work on anything, you saw it. So one of the things that was kind of key is if you saw something like with Aquaman standing a certain place and he looks kind of strange, as if he's standing in front of a background screen, it's probably because that was a reshoot. And it may be a tiny piece of the reshoot that's incorporated into the larger picture. So that's all I got to say about the CGI. But yes, of course, they seem to be, as the movie is even playing in cinemas, they seem to be refining that CGI. Because the day before, when I watched Justice League, I saw certain things. And when I watched it today, it seemed that the CGI has improved from yesterday. So they probably are still working on this movie, even as we speak, to finish the job, to get it properly done. And I can tell, like, that obviously you can tell what are reshoots, because some of the reshoot stuff is a little bit coarser in CGI than the other stuff. But maybe as this movie keeps on playing in cinemas, you may actually see improvement in the CGI as things go along. So that's interesting. Another thing that I thought was very interesting with the CGI, you remember I told you that certain scenes which I thought were probably in the third act, which they actually were in the third act, the purple kind of rock formations that come out the ground, it looks so scary. And the whole thing looks scary. Just the way how the world was changing was scary. So I really dug that, and I really enjoyed that. I enjoyed the badassery of the movie. There's a lot of badassery in this movie. There's a lot of more action than in Batman v Superman. So I enjoyed it. Steppenwolf to me was a perfect villain for this kind of movie. He provided action where there was necessary action, beautiful choreographed scenes, and he was powerful enough that we believed that things could go south in this movie. And so you gotta have that tension and that belief that this guy is dangerous. And there's so much more to Steppenwolf than that. But I was pleased with what I saw. When I initially saw Steppenwolf, I thought he was going to look like a kind of hawk-billed, funny-looking thing. But he turns out to look really fantastic, scary, but really fantastic. And I love what the direction they went with them. Now, I do have some criticisms of this movie. I don't think of it as a masterpiece by any shot of imagine. I think of it as a solid film. Like Batman v Superman, the theatrical cut was solid. This, of course, is better than Batman v Superman in many different respects and aspects. But what I would like to say is that when talking about Justice League, and when we talk Justice League, we're talking caricatures. What I loved about the Justice League throughout this movie was they were evolving as the movie went along as well. And so I just wanted to state that for the record because I have so many videos I would like to talk about with respect to Justice League. Before I go on, Regal Cinemas is doing a double feature. Now, this passed already. It was November the 16th, which was the Thursday. But hopefully Regal Cinemas may continue doing this double feature with Wonder Woman and Justice League. Maybe they will, maybe they won't. And this here is some concept art from Justice League. As you can see, there's a flamethrower throwing flames at parademons there. And like I said before, the parademons in Justice League, the movie, are not just fodder. And they sure as hell are not easy to destroy, okay? Which is really cool. And they're so attractive to me. They're scary, but I like the elaborations on them. And I like the fact that they can do many different things. So, having said that, I just wanted to say that and understand this is a definitely Zack Snyder tribute to the 2001 Justice League television series, the animated television series, and definitely this movie corresponds to that. Even though we don't have Martian Manhunter and Hawkgirl in it, it's really awesome to see. I not spoiled the movie, and I'm not going to do spoilers for the movie until next week, Sunday. Now, some of you have asked me questions about what do you think about the box office of Justice League? How do you think it's going to perform at the box office, etc., etc., etc.? Let me put it to you this way. You guys will determine how far it actually succeeds at the box office. It's not going to be the critics. It's not going to be the detractors or people who try to detract from this movie. Because this movie, the product, Justice League, it's a product that everybody can enjoy. This is a product that everyone would enjoy because it has something in it for everyone. So, and most comic book fans will enjoy this film. So there's really nothing much you have to do to sell this movie because it really encapsulates what heroes are and what superheroes are. And it does it in a meaningful way, and I think with some depth. There's many very, 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 very powerful things said in this movie, though I must admit the story is quite simple. Not as simple as Suicide Squad, but it's still quite simple. But the journey, the subplots in the story, the stories of the characters especially, and why the characters are so potent is because of their backstories. It's just why when John Campea talks about removing certain scenes for the backstory in his spoiler review of the certain characters, I find that stupid because there's relevance and there's payoff to that. And besides that, it's informative to different personality types, how they can conduct themselves in life. So, I seriously believe that, I can't spoil it for you guys, but I will say it this way. I seriously believe that everyone can enjoy this movie. This is a movie anyone would enjoy and everyone would enjoy because there's something for everyone in this movie. As a result of that, and just listening to the applause and the universal laughter of certain things in the movie, as well as sometimes the awes and woes and triumphs where people jump up and start yelling and stuff in the cinema, I can tell you for a fact this movie is going to be a home run hitter at the box office. But as DCEU fans, if you're all in, I love to use that now, and if you come together as DCEU fans right now over me, I'm just joking. If you do that, then you can do a coordinated movement to ensure that people go to see this movie, because the critics are what, it's 100 and something, 200 and something, 300 and something people, and I do believe the critics are on the wrong side of history when it comes to this movie and the impact it's going to have. Just like how the United Nations women, who so-called feminists, are on the wrong side of history with Wonder Woman. I think that these critics are on the wrong side of history with this movie, and I feel sorry for them. I know there's probably a couple more critics to come in and give their critical assessment of this movie, and there's still time for them to probably redeem themselves. But I think they're on the wrong side of history with this one, and it doesn't matter how much this movie debuts with it. What really matters is how it ends its run, and I think it's going to end its run pretty strong. After people have seen this movie, there's no doubt in my mind a lot of people are going to go back and see the movie. When I was coming out of the theater, I didn't stay for the second post-credit scene. The first one I watched, but because I knew the second one, I didn't bother to stick around. And as I was leaving, I heard a guy say, "I need to come back and see this movie." I heard a lady say, "I need to come back and see this movie." And I'm pretty sure these people are just average people. They didn't know anything about it. And I'm telling you, man, that's a good thing. Because the rewatchability of this movie is quite good. I mean, I went and rewatched it. I got to tell you, though, the beginning of this movie will make you cry. Okay? The beginning of this movie will make you cry. In fact, the song that was playing in the beginning of the movie, Everybody Knows. My. Everybody knows. That song will rip you in pieces. You will want to break down. I almost broke down and cried. And that's the depth of how powerful this movie is in tapping into your emotions. And I think Patty Jenkins was very good at directing that with Wonder Woman. The opening scene of baby Diana running through the streets brought tears to my eyes, and I didn't know why that was happening, but it was the gravity of the situation. And the second time in a row, that song, Everybody Knows, ripped into me again. And I can't spoil the movie, so I won't, but I'll tell you that the song, Everybody Knows, it's a killer, man. It's a killer. And it's very sobering, and it sets the tone for the film. The film is a sober film. It's very much like Wonder Woman, but it has these sprinkles of humor in it that are very funny. This film is such a complete film that it carries you through a range of emotions. You're laughing at certain moments, and everything has a reason for it being there. You know, as much as other people who are detracting this film will say, "Oh, this is haphazard. This film is a beautiful mess," or "It's a mess," I disagree. I think that everything connects together quite nicely and is well knit. And I still don't see what people are talking about in terms of scenes being cut short too fast, and they're missing parts in the movie. I really don't see that. The way how the movie's stitched together, to me, it's stitched together just fine. I just think that there's some rough editing, not rough editing, I'm sorry, the rough ends of the film in terms of the quality of film from one piece to another piece. Sometimes you can see that, okay, this piece, it's very short sometimes. Sometimes it's about a second or 2 seconds. The camera pans, and then you see this shot, which you say, nah, this had to be done in reshoots because, this looks a certain way. But it's not any significant thing. It seems as though Joss Whedon was kind of threading the thing together. He was kind of sewing the movie together a certain way, because they had to remove certain things, so he had to do last minute stuff, and he sewed certain parts back together, and they didn't get enough time to really work on it and keep that shine and polish like the other places. And you can see that for certain scenes, but you could see other places that you could see they did the work on it, so it's seamless. It's just, you couldn't tell. It's not that something's cut short. I don't see that at all in this film. I thought that this film did a remarkable job in what it was doing, but it was just very aware of the time it had to develop certain things. So I didn't feel like the film was rushed or anything like that. I just felt that there was still some fine tuning and refining of the film to be done, but they just couldn't get it all done. They ran out of time. That's what I get. That's the feeling I get. I agree with John Campy on that. One more thing I want to say about this movie before I go in my bed. I want to say that for those of you who haven't seen this movie, trust me on this one. the understanding that you go into this movie with is not. Don't try to go into this movie as if it's going to be the grandest, greatest movie you've ever seen in your entire life. It's going to change your life forever and remakes history, and you're going to get all these oohs and ahs, and you're going to be all. Yes, it has stuff which will blow you away, but that can wear off if you've been hearing hype for a movie all the time, and it's overhyped for you. So I would suggest to you, especially if you've spoiled yourself by watching whatever you've seen, trailers or whatever, or you've been listening to reviews or whatever. This is what I got to say to you. In a way, the critical reviews help to bring down the anticipation for the movie. So it actually is doing this movie a favor, in a way. But the other thing is that when you go in to see a movie, I don't know how many of you go in to see movies, but when you go in to see a movie, what I would suggest to you, always, and this will help you a lot, go in to see a movie, of course, anticipate with the expectation, what am I going to see? I don't know what I'm going to see, but I want to see what it is about. Go in with curiosity. What is this movie about? And try to find out what the movie is about. And just follow along with whatever the story is giving you. And when you start to piece things together, then you can try and figure out what's coming next. Because it seems as though a lot of you don't even know how to watch movies anymore. You seem to think that this must happen in a movie and that must happen in a movie. And you go in thinking that this must be expected. The movie doesn't owe you anything. All it owes you is to tell its story. What you expect the movie to bring or what you don't expect the movie to bring is really irrelevant to what the movie's actually saying. A lot of you drown out or tune out of a movie because it's not doing what you expect it to do. And that's just not how movies work. Movies have never worked that way. So when you see something new, you reject it. So I'm trying to get you guys to think differently and to process information differently. The stuff I got to share with you guys in the spoiler reviews is going to be ridiculous. It's going to blow your mind. Because this movie goes all the way back, like I said, to the Justice Society of America in the early comics, the 1950s, okay? And even sometimes the 1940s. So you got to understand what it is you're seeing and how deep into the lore Zack Snyder went. And even though it seems as though he spent brief moments on certain things, they're very important, okay? On that note, leave your comments in the comment section below. You guys have a great one.